Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. What's going on?
Not stressed out at all over there?
About?
No, I'm just,
About what?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Just saying?
Yeah, just saying.
I've had a terrible day. What a terrible way to start the week. Just annoying things. Annoying things.
Someone's got a case of the Mondays.
Oh, my God. I woke up to find out fraud on my credit card. So I had to deal with that. That's never fun.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've called into those recently, but you're calling into some call center and there's 8,000 people in the background speaking.
Of course. Yep.
So how do you have a conversation with anybody?
Right. Yeah.
I can't hear anything. It's making me crazy. The background noise is making me nuts. My accounting services are all screwed up. It's sending it's sending the wrong things to people. So I have to try to rectify that.
Oh boy.
So I had that today. And then I'm not going to say who sent me this invitation because I don't want to blow this person up because it's a famous person. But a famous person cold called, reached out to me and said, we're working on something with people in sports. And I want to see if you'll take a phone call with my associate. I have no idea what it's about. It's probably some kind of business idea, whatever. But it's a very famous person from football. I'm not going to say who because I just don't want, because it wasn't this person that had the awkward phone call with me today.
Okay. It's just a connection.
Well, yeah, he's like, would you mind taking a call with my associate thing? Okay. Which happened today. Okay. And then I got 8,000 reminders about this. You got those now.
Sure.
We're 8 million reminders about it. So Zoom call starts, person comes on and says to me like, hey, it's nice to meet you. Tim, shouldn't have said that part. Anyway.
Let me dump it.
No, it's fine. All right. Somebody reached out to you to connect us, right? And you're in sports, correct? And I said, yes. And he said then to me, he goes, what questions do you have for me? And I said to him, I go, why don't you start? Because I don't know what this is about. Yeah. I said, and he was like, but, you talked to blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, he reached out to me and he said, would you take this call with you? And out of respect for him, because, out of respect for him, sure, right. I said, I would, but I actually don't know what this is about. So could you just, tell me what it's about? And this thing went sideways fast.
Oh, boy.
I mean, fast. He clearly had no idea who I was. Not that matters. But, he was like, what do you do for a living? And I go, I'm in sports broadcasting, which is why this person linked me up with you.
Right.
You didn't have to bother trying to Google me before we had the call. That's fine. But why do you think we're talking to each other? You've acknowledged, why we're talking to me, but I just told you I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, right. You don't know what the venture or idea or whatever.
No idea.
Is. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then so he was perturbed with me very fast. And I think it's because I'm direct and I have found this that people I don't like small talk.
Yeah, right.
I just don't like it.
I'm well aware, yeah. Uh-huh.
I know, that's why everybody gets annoyed with me really fast. If you give me 5 minutes with you and we just have a normal conversation, you'll love me for the rest of your life. But most people who meet me for the first 30 seconds, I'm like, what do you want?
Yep, right. Sure.
That's just my attitude about it. What do you want?
Right.
And in this case, you reached out to me. I said I would take a call. Just tell me what it's about.
That's right.
We could have small talk in the middle of it, but just tell me what it's about. Refused. Oh. Wouldn't tell me what it's about. Basically told me I'm being very annoying. And he actually said, he goes, we don't need to chase you down for this thing. And I said, you didn't. You did though. I'm like, right. I didn't reach out to you. I don't know who you are. I don't know what this is about. Why don't you just tell me what it's about? No.
Nothing. So you don't even know what it was about?
No.
You wasted all of your time then.
It was straight out of I wish I had it on tape. I wish this Zoom was taped so I could just send it to Larry David and go, here you go. Here's a bit for your next Curb Your Enthusiasm. It was bizarre.
As a third party, can I ask, do you think he assumed you knew what it was about?
But
clearly?
I told him I don't know what it's about.
Right.
I even said, I go, out of respect for this person, I'm taking this call without knowing what this is actually about because I respect this person. I got no details. Could you tell me what it's about?
Yeah, and nothing.
No.
That's a weird one.
And he just kept saying, do you have questions for me? And I finally said, I would if I knew what we were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
I might have a lot of questions, but I don't know what to ask you.
Did he want you to ask questions about him?
I don't know. I don't know him. I've never met him. Do I have questions? What do I have questions? Do you have questions? I do. Could you answer them? What is this about? If you can't answer that question, why are we speaking?
That's right. Yeah. Oof.
What a day.
That's a Monday for you.
Oh man. So I'm really upset. I'm just mad. I hate having my time wasted. I don't mind this conversation a little bit because it's funny.
Sure. Yeah. You got 5 minutes out of it. Sure.
Well, and I just now I'm going to tell 58 people today what happened today and how fun it is.
Yeah, right.
And I even, I'm not mad that he got weird on me. I'm just I even said to him, I'm like, you're acting really strange. Why don't you just tell me what it's about?
You're strange.
Yeah, right. Because he was
you're a weirdo.
Yeah, he's coming after me. And I'm like, I was like, I didn't reach out to you. I don't even know who you are. I'm like, why don't you tell me what this is about? Why can't you say it?
Maybe your mutual friend explained to him everything and thought
explained what?
I don't know. I'm just trying to connect the dots.
I'm trying to figure out what are we talking about.
Yeah, right.
That's all.
Right, exactly.
And I don't know what it is other than I know you're going to pitch me on a business opportunity. So just do that.
Yeah, right.
That's all I was getting at.
Right.
We don't need to play footsie. Just tell me what it is. We're not on a date. Just tell me what it is.
Right.
And I'm sure, considering who the person is that's behind it and the reason why they reached out to me in the first place and people in this industry, it's probably something up my alley.
Yeah,
sure. So I'll at least have a conversation with you about it. Why am I guessing?
Yeah, right.
It was weird.
Maybe he really wanted you to just figure out what it was. 20 questions.
Just guess? Yeah. Is it a stock?
What sport is it? Oh, let me knock down all the tiles. Guess who style?
Is it something I'd wear?
Yeah.
Is it what? What? Does it start with a T?
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he was looking for.
I think so.
Wanted to play games today.
Wanted to play games, and I didn't. I don't like playing games. I just tell me what's going on.
Right. Exactly.
Oh man, I was telling somebody else about this when I was driving in, and this person was like, because they're like me. They're like, people don't like direct people.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
They just don't.
We live in a society now where people, the more direct you are, they take it as you being mean, I guess.
Mean.
When really all you're doing is just trying to get to the bottom of things. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I took the call because if I didn't want to take the call, I wouldn't have taken it. Why can't we just talk about what we're here to talk about?
Yeah, right.
I don't understand.
Well, and I don't understand. Well, actually, what I really don't understand is not that there's anything wrong with being direct, but some calls are more casual than others. I would be fully prepared to, no small talk, let's just jump right into it. You should be prepared to just do that.
Well, that's what I was.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm getting at.
It wasn't personal.
Yeah.
And plus, I don't know you.
Right.
We've never met.
Right.
Why would I have small talk with you?
Correct. Yes, exactly.
And plus, you didn't even bother to figure out who you were talking to in the first place. So maybe you should ask me questions.
Right.
Who are you? Why are you on this call that I asked you to be on?
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Yeah. I even said to him, I was like, you clearly don't know who you're on the phone with. Why don't you ask me a question then?
Yeah, right. No, you.
No, you go first. I don't know. And then I'm like,
does
is it
sound
me?
like a weird one.
Well, I'm like, is it me? Is it me? Am I too direct for people? Do people just? Am I that mean? Do I come off as that mean? Because I don't mean to. I don't like to think that I'm a really mean person because I don't really think I am. But
it almost sounds like he needed you to pitch yourself or whatever it was.
Yes.
But you don't even know what it was.
Pitch myself for what?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is this a swimsuit competition? Is it a startup? What are you talking? Is it a real estate? What is it?
That's the dangerous part. Is you could have been
pitch myself.
You could have had to been like, all right, well, your investment is $10,000 right here, and you're like, what are you talking about?
Correct.
Here? I'm not committing to Jack. You know what?
Just tell me what it's about.
Right.
I took the call out of respect. I respect the person that set this thing up, so I'm going to be respectful to you. I kept reiterating that. I'm here because I respect your time and the person who set this up. Can you just respect mine a little bit here and tell me what's going on?
That's always what connections are at this point. It's mainly because, okay, I trust this person.
God, I hate to think I'm a mean person, but this is not the first time I've had these reactions to me. People meet me and they just do not like me right off the bat. Just right off the bat, they don't like me. They typically, by meeting 2 or 3, they love me. But like I have to get to meeting 2 or 3. And 90% of the people don't get me to meeting 2 or 3.
Some people like to be schmoozed from the get-go.
I don't.
I
actually don't.
Right.
I'm one of the people. You don't have to do that for me.
Right.
You don't have to tell me nice things. You don't like just why are we here? And then if we naturally have a nice conversation, that's great. Right. If we don't, we don't. But we got through the business.
Right.
Let's just get through the business.
Right. Exactly.
Unbelievable. What a day. In between, I'm calling the credit card company, and there's 8 million people in the background screaming the whole time. And I'm like, can you hear what I'm saying? It's fraud. Fraud, I tell you.
Can I at least ask that question? What set that off? Did you see a charge for something insane?
No. This is a new one.
Okay.
So about a month ago, I noticed transactions in my bank account that were off.
Okay. Got it.
It's a personal bank account.
Yeah.
So I called them and had to put a stop to it.
Got it.
Try to find out what it is. In a twist, the bank wouldn't give me my money back.
Oh, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
I'm not going to call out the bank who's refusing currently to give me my money back when it is abundantly clear it's just fraud.
That's absurd. It usually takes a little bit, but every case I've been able to get it back right away.
Thanks to Cumulus Media's portals that I have to do every so often.
Yeah. I
am fully aware of the red flags that I can actually tell this bank about how I know it's fraud.
But everyone has to deal with these now. Like
if you're in a company and you have to do these HR phishing portals.
Oh my God, it's the worst. But yes.
So A++, I've learned something.
That's right.
Because this person who does these portals would be very proud of the document I produced for the bank to show them why I know it's fraud and why I should get my money back. So somehow somebody got into, I don't use PayPal, but got into a PayPal account of mine.
Okay.
And started taking money out. And it was kind of unnoticeable the first month of it because it was very small transactions. And then they ramped it up.
Got it.
And that's when I started noticing them because they were in the multiple hundreds of dollars.
Got it. Okay.
So I had to call the bank and put a stop to it. I'm like, I don't know what these are. And then they said, well, we have to do an investigation or something into it and put a stop to this. I said, well, you got to put a stop to this person. They're not allowed to take money out of my bank account. And then they got back to me and said, the transactions don't appear to be fraudulent, so we're not giving you your money back.
Oh, my God.
And then I said, I want documentation of this. And they sent me documentation of it. And that's where I got the thanks, the more you know moments came out. The email from the person who's taking the money out is R Fishbone 6812 at Thailand.aie, and you're like, what's that?
Right.
Under the pseudonym of something that sounds real.
Right.
And I even had to write to him and be like, do you think this person works at that company? And oh, by the way, why would I take money out to myself through PayPal? Because that's how it's listed. Why would I do that? Does that make any sense to you?
The millennial in me is saying, why don't you just go to PayPal and try to shut everything down?
So, I didn't even know I had a PayPal account anymore. I haven't used it in so long, right? So, so that's stopped now, but I'm trying to get my money back. And I had to do the whole documentation thing to try to get them to give me my money back. And it's not a lot, which is why I was surprised that they were giving me a hard time. It's not like I asked for $100,000.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? So then it popped up on my credit card, same vendor.
Oh, boy.
They somehow accessed that.
Oh, geez.
I think when the bank account went down, they moved over to my credit card.
So it was probably the same. It's probably listed on your PayPal account. Then that's what it was.
I guess.
Yeah, that had to be because what it does on PayPal. On PayPal, you always have a order of things because I use PayPal often because it's fast to check out for things. If one payment fails, it just goes to your next one, whatever the next one is in line.
If one payment fails.
Yeah. So, like, if your bank account was the first option, which actually usually is on PayPal, which makes sense, your credit card would be the next one listed, which means...
So the second I shut it down on the bank account, it just immediately went to the next one.
It actually might have had... You might have had cards in between that might have expired or something.
Probably.
It just goes to the next one that's usable because it just
The
checks
weirdest
you out.
part is I'm surprised that... Because I don't recall using PayPal in a very long time, how it would even have the up-to-date credit card in there.
I mean, if you've had a credit card that... like everyone's gone through this, where if you have a card or a debit card that has the same number and has a new expiration date, like let's say it's just stayed the same over X amount of time, a lot of times, like the bank that I use will actually automatically update it on PayPal for you. So you don't have to go through anything extra.
Thanks.
So in your case, that was bad. But usually if you don't use something for a long time, it doesn't. But PayPal is so prominent and big that...
It's in their business to be up to date, or else because if it doesn't work.
And then all of a sudden, if you're like, oh, well, I don't have that, and then you stop buying whatever you were going to buy, that's in their best interest to keep all your info up to date and fast to check out because they want your money. So,
right.
Yeah. Like
all right. So that's been happening to me. So I had to call the credit card had to shut down.
Yeah, right. Of course.
And I had to put a stop to this.
Right. Get a whole new number and all that stuff. Yeah,
I know.
Right. Yeah.
So my credit card doesn't work for a week now.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
This has been a very annoying day. What a way to start the week.
I had that happen to me once, and it was some shop in Brazil that was running my card. And I was like, they were like, how do we know that you aren't running this? And I was like, I've never been out of the country.
Yeah.
I don't have a passport. It was like when I was 19 or 20 years old. Never been out of the country. So, yeah, I don't understand what their logic is.
It was so crazy. Like the where this is listed, and I know I could see where it emanated and how someone stole it through. It was like I don't want to say it because I just don't want to kill anything. But like
fine.
it was, you use something to park your car in places.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Somehow someone got into my account through that.
Okay.
Because that's where it started.
Got it. Okay.
And that must be how I'm linked to a PayPal account.
Yes, there are accounts.
It must be the only way because like it started with a $2 charge for parking my car.
Yep.
And then a week later, there was a similar charge, but a little bit higher, but like not how much I would pay to park a car.
Sure.
And then it ramped up to a number where I don't live in New York. So there's no way I'm paying that every week, guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
like this is the danger of what happens now too. Some people will stick a QR code on those meters. And you're not even on the parking site anymore.
That must have been what happened.
You're on a third part. You're not even on a parking website anymore. You're just on a fake parking website.
This sucks. Like, what is happening? We're all dead, aren't we? Like, we're all dead. Are we all dead?
No,
how's anyone going to survive any of this anymore?
You have to go through what someone my age has gone through, and it's trust nothing, double check everything. Anytime
that's true. Nothing's real.
Anytime you can do something physically, like have a card on an actual meter, use it. But then you have to double check that someone's not swiping your number off of that meter too, because that happens now too. Like people skim numbers off gas stations and stuff like that. You have to just stay on top of all of it.
How do you stay on top of that?
Good question.
Oh, I can't handle this. I gotta go off the grid.
I have one.
I'd love to dump social media. I would in a second. And then, like with all this other stuff, like these, I still carry cash. I shouldn't say that. So
do you?
Stupid. Do you now?
Do you?
Yeah. See you in the garage later. Like I don't actually like paying for things these ways.
What I've actually loved with my bank is on my app. And once again, I'm not giving anyone pub, but I have a literal tab that I can make my card usable or not. So I have one card that if I'm actually using it somewhere, I like to literally unlock it, use it, wait for the transaction to hit, and then I lock it up again. There's no chance anyone can do it. And I have one card that I mainly specifically use that for. And that's for that reason.
That's pretty good.
My bank, like once they offer that, I was like, oh, nobody's getting me anymore. Because it's happened to me 2 or 3 times where my credit card has gotten compromised. And it's just the modern world now. People...
It's just annoying. Too.
Yeah.
It's just annoying.
And I will give this, like I said, my bank has never had a problem with refunding it. Sometimes it takes a little bit, but I've never had a problem
I've
with
had such a run. I had hives for a week, pink eye, a root canal, which I thought was a cancerous tumor in my face for a little while. Now I got accounting services that can't add, fraud in my bank account and credit card, and somebody who took one look at me and thought I was the most annoying person on earth. So much so that he wouldn't even share the business opportunity with me.
It's all up from here, man.
Like, there's no chance he wasn't asking me for money And he took one look at me and said, I don't even want to ask you for money. I'm so annoyed with you. What a day.
That is.
Like, there's no chance he was offering me the opportunity of a lifetime. Like, he was offering me to buy into something for sure. And he took one look at me because I wouldn't small talk with him and said, no, I don't want to. Unbelievable.
Did he get your name right?
I don't even remember.
No, okay. That's always the cherry on top.
Hey,
for
Blank.
You. Yeah, it's either your first name or your last name. They rarely get it right. They rarely get either one, both of them right.
I apologize in advance for wasting this much time talking about all of this. I want to talk about Keim's piece on Dan Quinn. I also want to talk about the news about no running backs getting a franchise tag, which is about the least surprising thing that I can remember these days in the NFL cycle.
I was just going to say before the first segment was over, your son was great in his
Thank
play
you.
over the
He
weekend.
was great.
That's something to look forward to, or something
He
to look
was
back
great.
on.
My son played Shrek in his elementary school production of Shrek Jr.
Yes.
So he, had a big role, obviously, and so it was a lot, and he did outstanding. And Callow was kind enough to come to night one of two.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, how about that? That
Had
was
a good time.
Third, fourth, and fifth graders pulled it together.
That was well done.
It was well done. It was really well done. We were very proud of him.
And this isn't disparaging or anything. You don't know what the expectations are for these types of shows, and I was very pleasantly surprised about how well everything was run.
Well, I wanted to keep that part low, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yep.
But he did a great job.
Yep. All right. Let me take a quick break, and we will get into all the stuff what Keim wrote and what's going on in the NFL cycle next. Bram Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right. So Adam Schefter is reporting that no of the prominent running backs that are heading into free agency this year in the NFL are going to be franchised, which is not a surprise. There were a few of them last year. Tony Pollard got one. Saquon Barkley got one. He did, right?
Yeah. It was the three that got tagged last year.
He ended up.
Well,
Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler are not getting them either.
Yeah, those three. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. They got like the weird 1-year incentive deals.
Pollard was tagged.
Pollard was tagged.
Saquon got tagged to limit him.
Yeah. Okay.
And then didn't want to play on it.
But then they did the renegotiation.
They did a renegotiation with him.
And then Jacobs, I think, did the same thing.
Jacobs
right?
got tagged too, I believe. Didn't he come back? And then he changed, or they limited him. He would have left otherwise.
Yeah.
So they limited him.
I think Saquon was.
I know Pollard had it. On Pollard, this is an easy one. They're not giving a second franchise tag to him.
Right.
The number's too high for him. I've said this about him. I think he's a very good player. He is not a top 5 running back.
Right.
You're going to pay him a premium? Of course you aren't. I don't think that should limit him potentially re-signing in Dallas. But you're not going to pay him the second franchise tag is 20% more than the last one. So they're not going to do that.
Once the Saquon one happened, Jacobs got the same thing. He got, because the franchise tag number last year was quote unquote only $10 million.
Correct.
And then Jacobs got an $11 million deal, I guess, right after Saquon got his. So they both got the restructure. They bumped
them a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
To be like, this is what it is.
Right.
Look, we can have this discussion again. I agree that it's an undervalued position.
Sure.
And in the case of someone like Saquon Barkley, I think he should be paid a lot more money than he gets paid because he's a predominant force on his team. He is a big reason why they win or lose.
Yep.
I think he is a star. And I believe you pay a premium for anybody at any position that ascends to that kind of level. So on his case, should he be making what McCaffrey's making? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he should.
Yep.
Or more. Or should he make as much money as a primary receiver? Yeah, probably. But welcome to the market. It isn't what it is. That's not what it is. But on the case of Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, or even Josh Jacobs, who I think is probably a tier above those other two, but he's not Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, but the market is what the market is. And the teams don't have to do this, and franchising them doesn't even make a lot of sense to me.
Right.
They are. I know they're not disposable. They shouldn't be treated that way because all of these players have had, not Jacobs, he hadn't been around that long yet, but the rest of them have had pretty good long careers, and with the exception of when Saquon got hurt, has been extremely effective. So I see their value. I just think they're playing the wrong position right now. This may change one day, but I don't know. I'm not sure that I see it. McCaffrey is proof positive that if you have a running back like this, you can have an offense that can really run. I think the reason why the Giants got in the playoffs a couple years ago was because of Saquon Barkley, not because of Daniel Jones. I think that's how they got into the playoffs, because he had a crazy first half of the season, and he's that kind of player. In the case of Pollard, I think they just did it to limit him because the number isn't ridiculous, but they're not going to do it twice. And I said this about him last year. I don't think he's a premier, 17-week lead running back. I think he's a very good player as a tandem back. If he's getting the ball 10 to 15 times a game, he could probably be pretty effective. Right. If you think he's going to run the ball 20 to 25 times a game, I don't see it with him. So, but that's just me. And therefore, why would I pay him $15 million a year? I wouldn't. Eckler's a weird one. Eckler, similarly, I think is a good running back who has a knack for scoring.
Yep.
He has a knack for scoring, but he's not a top tier between the 20s running back.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
In general. So I don't think I'm paying him a premium. And with Derrick Henry, he's a Hall of Famer. So, what's left in the tank there? I don't know. Only he knows that. Titans know that. I think he's going to end up on a contender. Whether that works out, how many times have we seen premier running backs actually go to other teams and not have the same effect?
Yeah, of course.
Dalvin Cook went to the Jets, barely played, went to, where was he? I don't even remember where he was at the end. And it was just like...
He's on Baltimore.
Yeah, and he was like, nah. It was a little late showing up there, but they didn't even bother with him. So I don't necessarily buy that he'll just show up somewhere and be automatically great again.
Henry,
albeit, he's an unusual player. His size it's hard to replicate.
Henry too looks to be a mutual too. Like, it seems like that one, he's not interested in the 1-year deal there. He knows it's a rebuild. I think he knows he's got enough left in the tank to give 1 year to somebody. So that one seems more mutual. These other three, though, all wanted long-term deals. They're just not going to get it because of the position.
Because of the position. Yeah. I feel for people like Barkley, because Barkley, I think, is one of the best players in the NFL, period. Pick your position. If you said, who are the best, 3 to 4 running backs that are difference makers, McCaffrey, him, he'd come up to me. There's a couple others, but he's of that. So I feel for him. I think he is vastly underpaid. Everyone else on this list, even Henry at this state of his career, maybe not 5 years ago, but at this state of his career, it just is what it is.
Yep. Right.
And it may change. One day it may change. It wasn't that long ago that the receivers weren't making this kind of money, and then all of a sudden they were. And if things kind of shift around a little bit and the running backs become a little more valued, then they will. The problem is their careers aren't very long. So most people don't want to give them that kind of contract because it takes up too much of the cap. That said, I think if Saquon made 11 last year, they could, because the cap went up again, they could probably bump him a little bit and feel pretty good about it. But it's probably a short-term deal. And he has no leverage because he keeps saying he wants to be there. That's the real problem. I think he wants to be a Giant for life if possible.
Well, yeah. He grew up there. He played for, where'd he go? Penn State, right?
He went to Penn State.
So,
he grew up in the area.
He wants to stay in that part of the country.
A Giant.
Yep, right, exactly.
He likes being a Giant.
Yeah.
Listen, I'd be happy for him to go to Denver. Have fun. Go ahead.
Right.
Take off. Have fun. And maybe someone will come along and offer him a third year, because I think that's what would pry him away. And then you're just taking a risk, but it might be the right risk. If he doesn't get hurt again, he's a dominant player. But again, I've seen these guys go to these other places. It doesn't always work that way. With running backs, it's weird. It doesn't typically transition to the other place all that easily. Sometimes it does. A lot of times it doesn't.
The biggest exception I always thought was McCaffrey. McCaffrey was always banged up. And I remember when they traded for him, everybody was like, you gave up that much for an injury-prone running back on a fat contract? And then all of a sudden, he's been basically healthy, except for the end of this year against us, funny enough.
He's been dominant.
Not only dominant, but durable, too.
Yes.
So I think it depends on the situation. I'm with you, though. A lot of times it just doesn't work out that way because veteran running backs are that. They break down overnight, literally, it seems. I think Henry's going to go somewhere and have an impact. I don't think he can be a 1-1 type guy, but he could be a very good complementary running back for a contender, I think. So, I don't know. We'll see.
The other one is T. Higgins is getting tagged, which I think just Cincinnati wants to limit his mobility. I don't blame them. I think as far as 1-2 punches goes, Chase and Higgins are about as good as it gets in the NFL. And they don't want to break it up, and I don't blame them. I do think they're going to run into a crazy crunch here, though, very, very soon because they got to pay Chase because he's the superstar of the two. So they're going to pay him, and they're going to pay Higgins for at least 1 year. I'm assuming they're going to try to get a longer-term deal done. But, they're already basically saying you're a $20+ million a year receiver, and they're heading towards Chase and Justin Jefferson are going to get $28 to $29 million a year contracts. So I don't know, considering what they pay Burrow. So if they pay Burrow 50 and they give those two what would be a combination of around 45, so they'd have 95 million in 3 players in the very near future. That doesn't add up to me.
Yeah.
Now, I'm like,
well,
okay, like that stuff. This is where the NFL gets you every single time. Because the second you start paying these particular prices, you get into a situation where you have to be weak somewhere, or you better draft unbelievably well to fill spots, because you got to make choices at some point.
The one thing I will say, though, is I'm sure the Bengals made this call on Friday, because I think it's when the first report of it came out. I will say they probably saw how much the cap was jumping up and went, oh, that's a mulligan. We're just going to use the extra cap space to tag Higgins. So I bet you there's going to be a lot more of that happening. Where
the Saints did this for a long time with all the offensive players they had. They just kicked the can down the road. They kept restructuring.
They're still doing it.
Yeah, just keep restructuring. And as long as your ownership is willing to basically pay more than what the cap is with upfront money, which is interesting for Cincinnati because they don't have a history of doing that. But if they are, then you can kind of kick the can down the road and avoid it. And eventually you have to take a blow it up year.
Yes.
And whenever that day comes but that's a long way away for them. Burrow's young. So you're not going to blow it up anytime while he's out there. The day that he retires is the day you go, let's go into cap hell for a year and reboot.
Yes.
Well, and start it over again.
Remember Cincinnati ownership said it last year before, because they extended Burrow last year, right? I'm not misremembering. So
I remember he broke the record before Lamar broke his record. Remember, they were all breaking each other's record.
But with Burrow, I will never forget the quote on that. It was, because it was like, well, it's Cincinnati. Like, if you know about Cincinnati, they don't pay anything. They never have paid anything. But I remember the quote was like, business is booming. We're happy to pay it, essentially. And so I think that's...
They had no choice with him.
No, of course. But the fact that they were saying that out loud does tell you that even they were like, we're making so much money off of actually winning and season tickets and selling jerseys and all that stuff. And that's why the tune has changed with them, because they've got one of these 1-1 type guys. So.
He's a generational player. Right. So, what are they going to do? And he's from there. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're not going to hold his feet to the fire. I'm not surprised by Higgins, but knowing what's coming down the road with Chase, I don't know how they're going to support having both of them on the team at the same time. 2 $20+ million receivers. So they could go the route of having a cheap running back so they can make a little bit of savings there. You got to find your ways to cut the corners. And I guess that's what they're going to go for. And, like I talked about this last week with Washington, where they're going to have a decision about Logan Thomas. They have a lot of cap room, but he's someone they're going to have to think about. Are they going to make him a cap cut, get some savings with him, and try to go younger at the position? They don't really have his replacement on the team. But what has been, readily available in the draft over the last few years in the 2nd to 4th round is very viable pass-catching tight ends. A lot of teams have found them. Sam Laporta was not a first-round pick last year. Jake Ferguson was not a first-round pick. In fact, Dallas took 2 of them last year, Pendershot and Ferguson, and let Dalton Schultz walk. They're like, we're not going to pay him $14, $15 million a year. We get these 2 rookies, and there practically was not much of a difference. In fact, their offense was better this past year without Dalton Schultz in it than it was with him. So... I love Mark. I think Travis Kelce's special. I think Andrew's very, very good. Again, I'm willing to pay for the special people, but what you're seeing,
like 3 of them.
What you're seeing below that now is there are a lot of viable players at that position that can be transformed into this at a cheap rate. So I think the tight end market's going to stay low, because if you can draft them and plug them in, and you have this supply, and that's what people think about with running back, which is why they're not being taken very high unless you're a special one. Then the market's going to remain depressed, because there's a line out the door and teams think they can find a guy in the 3rd round. Honestly, Brian Robinson's a really, really good running back. He was a mid-round pick.
That's right. Yep. Exactly.
So was Antonio Gibson. He was a mid-round. Pollard was too. Pollard wasn't a first-round pick.
Right.
Saquon is special, was picked really high. But some of these other ones, they weren't.
Right.
Eckler certainly wasn't. Mm-hmm. You can find guys for at least a 2 to 5 year window that typically are very productive for you.
It's also dependent on your actual offense. Like, look at Njoku. Like, he was drafted in the 1st round in 2017, but he's never been a consistently good tight end with the Browns. Granted, part of that's their actual quarterback play, but what was his best stretch of his career? The second half last year with Flacco. I think it also depends on your offense too. I think some offenses don't really need an offensive tight end. Yes, it'll change it up if you actually use them properly. But clearly, in Njoku's case, he wasn't ever used properly, apparently, until the last year or so, or 2 years, really, when he actually had a good quarterback and they actually spotlighted him, too.
I can't make a case against Cincinnati letting T. Higgins walk. I can't make that
Especially
case.
in that division. I think I think that whole division is really just trying to hold on to all their talent as much as they can because it's so competitive team to team to team to team.
Yes.
I mean,
and
3 of the 4 made the playoffs last year, right? Or were about to, right?
Yes.
Steelers made
all
it.
4
Steelers
were
made
over 500.
Yeah,
that's unusual.
That's what it was, yes. Steelers made it, though. Ravens made it.
The Bengals did not, but they were in it till the end.
Yes, yeah.
They were in it till the final couple of weeks.
Yeah,
and the Browns got
in.
in.
That's right. Yeah.
And lost. So 3 of them got in. All 4 were over 500.
Right.
It would have been the first time ever if all 4 actually got in.
Right, exactly.
And I don't know. I can't make a case against them doing what they're doing because I do think that, like, Burrow in the passing game is what it is there. That said, at some point they will have to pay their piper. And these are the decisions where the good teams get put into a tough pickle. You know, and these are the ones where you have to make a choice. Is T. Higgins that much better than the alternative from them?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I would argue that it is, but Buffalo's doing this right now. They're letting Gabe Davis walk.
Yeah.
Is he that much better? Like, I think that and wisely, I think they're going, do we really want to pay him $14 to $18 million, whatever the number's actually going to be for him, even though he's been really good here, but we all agree he's not special.
Right.
But can they replicate his performance? I don't know. He's been such a clutch player for them. I thought that was a big deal when he didn't play in the playoffs and got hurt and didn't play in the playoffs for them because he had been a clutch performer down the field for them through the years. So that's the decision they have to make. I've talked about this more often with quarterbacks. There are certain ones that when they reach a certain point, I know it's hard to do because it's hard to replace the quarterback, but if I were the Giants, I never would have paid Daniel Jones that number.
Right.
It's too high of a number for someone who hasn't won very much, and maybe that's what the Bears are thinking about right now with Justin Fields at some point, because what's the low end for him? Even if he just maintains what he's doing right now, which is they don't win a lot, but his stats are outrageous. He's clearly not a bust and can clearly play, and everyone can convince themselves, well, if he just comes here, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, what's the low end of that now? 40?
Right.
40.
Yeah.
Right? Like when the Giants did that last year, I went, good, I'm glad they did it. I don't think they're going to win with him.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It makes it harder for them to get better if he gets paid that number.
It also, like, I always look at the situation in Seattle. Like, as soon as they paid Russ, they weren't hitting on their draft picks, and all of a sudden, they never really got back there. Like, they made it to the 2 Super Bowls. They were never contenders again once they paid him because it's tough to build your roster around. I guess at the time he was like a $30 to $40 million quarterback, whatever the number was, but it was still so high that all of a sudden you have to start nailing everything, including your free agent signings too, and that wasn't happening in Seattle. Not to mention, you can say whatever you want about the offense or however they were built, but then on top of all of that, the Legion of Boom guys wanted to get paid. And not only did they not all get paid, some of them had to retire, like Cam Chancellor, stuff like that. So I think, you're right. The roster building becomes so tough, and you have to make sure that you are going to be really, really good, or that quarterback can actually carry the load with less. Like, I think we talked about it. Look at what Mahomes did this year. That's how we know Mahomes is elite now. He carried that offense to a Super Bowl, and they won it. And his one weapon.
I think he did it 2 years in a row. Last year, too.
Yeah, right.
Last year, that was the same group of receivers it was last year.
Right. It's like that's when you know.
Oh, they had Juju Smith-Schuster? That's how much better they were?
That's right. So you also have to have the right player.
They didn't have Tyreek on that team either.
Right, exactly. So, you have to have the right quarterback that can overcome some of those shortcomings.
The GM job is very hard these days because the numbers are so skewed in certain spots. You have to make very interesting choices, and I think cap management's a huge part of all of this, unless you do have Mahomes. Yeah. Where apparently it covers up so many of whatever issues that you have because he's so good.
Yeah.
Then so hopefully we draft the guy who's going to be that for us.
Well, I do wonder this too. Like I talked about this a little bit on my show on Friday. Was I wonder what team saw that number pop out and started working behind the scenes of contracts. Like, could you start restructuring with guys you didn't think you were going to restructure before? Use that $30 million right now to restructure guys out. Or whatever. Like I'm wondering when we see a few of those this week because all the agents are in Indy for the combine too. So
I've been waiting for it too. Like I'm actually, and maybe we should just do it tomorrow since the combine is starting. I want to go through the roster because there's a lot of choices that need to be made, and I am there's going to be more carryovers than you think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's guys that don't have contracts.
That's right.
And I'm a little surprised at some of them.
There's other ones like with us, obviously with like we've talked about with John Allen. Well, if he's sticking around, you might as well talk to him about that
restructuring.
Yeah, that restructure. Like I look at if Peters isn't going, oh wow, we have the extra 30 to work with now. Let's start making a few of these deals right now, and then all of a sudden we know what we're looking for. I mean, I would be shocked if they're not doing something with the extra money.
I agree. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram Washington Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. Let's see. Over the weekend, the Caps lost to Florida, but got a point out of it. So I'll take that. I'll take. No, I mean.
Yeah, no.
I mean, they're the Walking Dead right now, and that's a tough place to play.
Correct.
And I'll take all the points we can get at this point. I mean, I listen. I'm with you on they got to have to win everything, but
7 out of 10. I mean, down the stretch, they have to play 700 ball. I mean, or 75 is really what it is. 3 out of 4.
Still probably need just a touch of luck, and that would be to sneak in.
Yes, correct. Yeah, because the wild card is so convoluted in front of them. Even if teams go up or down, it's not enough for them. Like the other night, I think it was on Thursday, they won, and then like every other team in their way also won. They were still 8 points out of a spot. So
because the eighth place team right now is Philadelphia, they're still 6 points behind them. So there's a ways to go here. They have a game in hand, but they're a ways to go here. And
you got to remember too, it's a different chase in the NHL. It's the first 3 teams from their respective divisions, then the wild card. So Philly, yes, they're 6 points back of Philly, but then the actual wild card, they're 8 points back. So they would have to overtake the Flyers if they wanted to take that spot. But the other teams of their division are also right there. So, yeah, it's
6 points back. But the good news actually with the Flyers is they have 3 games in hand with them.
Yes, correct.
So, they're actually closer, assuming, they're actually closer than 6 points back. Let's even just give them 1 point in each of those. They're literally 3 points back.
They have to
so that's a real, okay, so they have a real shot there. But they're too far back of the other 2 ahead of them.
Correct.
So
they're not going to get into the wild card. They're going to have to overtake the 3rd spot. And the 3rd spot, you also have to keep the Devils at bay, too. So, I mean, you're essentially going to have to beat the Devils out and beat the Flyers out to get a spot down the stretch here. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. But they, listen, I think this was, where are they next? Are they back home?
Tonight's like.
Oh, right. They got Ottawa.
It's back to back like must wins. They have Ottawa tonight, which
you like to call the
auto win.
Yes.
Because they're bad, actually. They're not that good. So they should win tonight. Then tomorrow is the massive one. They go to Detroit to play the Red Wings. Like they have 2 massive back-to-back games. If they beat the Red Wings, all of a sudden I think they're cooking a little bit, taking care of a team in front of them in the standings. So, yeah, I mean, as far as over the weekend, though, that was a great game against the Panthers. They largely played, just as well as the Panthers did throughout that contest. It was not a kind of grip it and survive type game. They played really well defensively. They've actually in the last week have turned around how they play. Even Ken Sabourin was saying it on our airwaves. Most of the veterans here aren't used to playing this way, defensively, locked down and mistake free. They're starting to actually play really well with it. And so that's where we kind of landed at the end of our broadcast on Saturday was, you know what, they're starting to buy into this is how we need to play to win these games, and that's exactly what they're doing. And here's the weird thing with them. They won 3 of 4 last week. They get an overtime point against Florida. They've lost a player in every single game. Yeah. They lost Faravari against Montreal. Then they lost Dowd. Then they lost Oshie. And then on Saturday, they lost Anthony Mantha, who's a game-time decision. And
I heard he's skating, though. Sounds like he's at least skating. Okay. The other 3 they're calling week to week.
Yeah, he's skating, but he's still a game-time decision, and he leads the team on 5-on-5 goals. So, you take that away, that's a brutal injury if he can't go. And
I'm actually happy for him that he's having a normal season this year and that his career seems to be back on track. Whether it's here or somewhere else beyond this year, I'm actually happy for that guy. Because after reading all the things where he kind of went through the I don't know what's going on here. Right. I know I'm better than this. I'm going to show you I'm better than this. And now he's having a year where he's going to have 20-plus goals. I'm actually happy for this guy.
Well, and not unlike the Nick Dowd injury, though, you look at that and you go, even with your playoff chances this year, you're kind of going, crap, we could have offloaded you for a first-round pick, too, if somebody needed some secondary scoring. So it's you hope that he's okay, too, if they decide to sell, because there's multiple guys here that could really help you in the future if you actually wanted to offload them. So,
all right. The benching of Jordan Poole has woken him up. He was lighting it up last night.
31 points, yeah.
31 points. It wasn't crazy pants. I actually saw a little bit of it. Full boundary stones. I was watching. They were full boundary stones last night.
That was the giveaway last night. Was boundary stone. I can't use the word Lego because they weren't Legos, but building blocks of boundary stones. That was the giveaway last night. You want one of those?
I do not. So I get, you know what? Like all's well that ends well here. He seems to have taken his benching very well, and he is a spark plug off the bench, and they still lose anyway, and whatever.
Lost a close game again to one of the East best teams yesterday. This is
they
who
were
Wizards,
leading in the fourth quarter.
This is who the Wizards are. They keep it close against most teams apparently, unless they go to the West, where they just get blown out by the Nuggets and blown out by the Thunder. So yeah.
All right, I'll take it. At this point, I'll just take it.
Nobody's taking that contract though.
No,
like,
they're not.
How are they going to get out of that?
No, I think that the message got through to him. That's the good news.
Sure.
The message got through to him,
right.
and he's like playing like a normal person for however many minutes he plays, and he had 31 points last night. It was season high for him.
Yep.
Did you see the Clippers rebrand?
I did. Yeah.
What'd you think?
Big fan.
So was I.
Big fan. I
thought it looked really great.
I saw a lot of people grilling that secondary logo. It almost looks like
the ship.
Yeah, it looks like almost like a cruise ship.
They're going back to their nautical roots.
But it's like, do you guys not understand what a clipper is? That's a boat. So
that's what it was.
Yeah,
you should go look at the original ones back from San Diego. It's like it looks like sailboats are stupid looking.
What I love too is they had a tiny little stripe there of the baby blue, which goes back to their throwback uniforms, which totally means they're going to get a baby blue uniform at some point. They've worn one in recent history with all of the million Nike jerseys that come out. But no, I thought big fan. One, big fan. Two, they got ahead of any leaks. They're like, screw it. The rebrand's done. Here it is.
Here it is. The logo's cool. The logo has like a giant C around a cruise ship. Yep. The bottom of the cruise ship looks like a basketball.
Yeah, it's great.
I loved it.
No, I thought it was fantastic.
I figured LA's in there somewhere, but I can't find it.
I didn't look that closely.
And the C is kind of like a nautical C.
It looks like almost like not a target, but like a radar. Kind of like a radar C around
or
it.
a compass.
Yeah, but the most
I liked it. I thought it was great. They went back to red, white, and blue.
Yeah, no.
They're out of the whatever that black uniform was that was straight out of 1983 Ice Cube. Like I didn't like that look. I mean, I thought that was fine for like a year, where they tried to go like I don't know.
I saw a lot of that uniform last year. Yeah. The best part about it is they just went back to their classic cursive.
Yes.
One color. Fine with it. Completely fine with it.
I liked it.
Yeah. I'm good with it. Yeah,
I was into it. Doc got booed in Philadelphia yesterday. He brought the Bucks back. They won.
Right.
So maybe they're waking up now. They've had their little whatever's been going on, and maybe they realized they were saying crazy crap and decided to start acting normal again.
You think someone in that locker room was trying like, guys, why are we the center of the NBA world? Someone had to have gone into the locker room and said that. Like, why are we the ones everyone's talking about?
The team meeting should just be like, I want you to watch these press conferences. Right. This is what we're saying.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Does any of this
lock it down?
Yeah, like just start can we all just laugh at each other for a minute and just realize we're all acting a little crazy and talking crazy, and maybe I don't know, we're pretty good at this, and let's just try playing basketball again and stop worrying about all this dumb stuff.
You mean they didn't vote each other off the island and then had no one left afterwards?
No one to blame. Very quickly, I want to mention my guys AU beat Colgate yesterday,
Big game yesterday
at the buzzer.
Yes.
Colgate had the third longest win streak in the NCAAs.
Oh, look at that.
Keeps winning this conference, the Patriot League, like every year, and probably will again.
This is away, I assume?
They already have the 1 seed. They haven't lost a home game in a long time. So AU at the buzzer knocked them off. So I was pretty pumped about that. Maryland beat Rutgers. Good for them.
Good for
them. And maybe I'll spend some time. Let me hang on to this because Jay Billis thinks they ought to arrest all people that court storm. But I think maybe that probably takes more than 20 seconds of a commentary on that.
Maybe could we do an in-between? How about just bare minimum that?
He wants to arrest all of them.
It's a little out there.
We got to get a good slogan for that. I would think I think the people down the hall would like a good slogan for it. When you storm the court,
lock them up.
Lock them up. They probably do want to lock up every kid on a college campus. So you know what? They might like that.
Without just venturing too far into it, there should just be a process. Why is there not a process in place for when this is happening?
How do you stop thousands of people running onto the court?
You can beef up security right by the bench real quick. I mean,
you could. I mean, I think how many security guards do you need to have?
Probably
really
5 or 6. Probably nothing crazy.
You think?
Guys in bright yellow shirts right up against the bench, you're fine. Just make sure they get out okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't know about arrest them. Is there
No,
some
it's
kind of
not.
school code that you're breaking? I'm more into that idea.
You could have gone with what was happening with Carlin and Joe's producer. He said if you storm the court, that your postseason eligibility gets taken away.
Oh, well, come on. See, again, we're going too far here.
Which I thought was funny. Takes one kid.
One kid. Yeah.
No.
But, and then he's a plant from
That's
the
right.
other
That's
school
right.
who did it to ruin your
Paul.
season. Paul. I ran on their court and I poisoned everybody. Jeez. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram Weinstein, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. From sunny Florida, Mets beat the Nats 6-3. From Mark Zuckerman, Josiah Gray was really good. Robert Garcia gave up a grand slam. All 3 runs driven in by Brady House and James Wood.
There you go.
Those are the things I think everybody wants to hear.
Have you-
Those guys doing things.
Did you see the first James Wood home run over the weekend?
No.
Go look it up. Moonshot out of the park.
Yeah.
This is the guy, as far as I'm concerned. Like, this is going to be the guy that shifts everything around. He's from here, he's a Moco native. Like, if there's a player that needs to convince you that they're going to hit the next step, it's going to be that guy. Not Dylan Cruz, probably. This guy, he's crazy. Go look up the home run when you get a chance. It was ridiculous. He did another one yesterday, too. So,
Where did he go to high school? Do you know?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But he's the truth. You just look him up, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, yeah, no wonder that guy's good at baseball. He's a massive human being. So, yeah.
Let's see. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. I think because my overall take on it is let's just move on, which is Eric Bieniemy making a point of telling reporters over the weekend in taking a job as the associate head coach at UCLA that he was not fired here. He left.
Right.
And so that's why I just want to just let it go. And there's no reason to comment on it or move on. I'll just reiterate what I've felt about him the whole time. I think he is a very good coach. I think he was in an unsettling situation. I think he was given a little too much authority. And unfortunately, Rivera didn't have his back in the way the players needed him to have his back.
Right.
Rivera failed here on him. Like, this is a failure of Rivera's end of tenure, was how he handled that, amongst other things.
Yep.
But he ceded over all of the authority to Bieniemy for the offense. The players didn't love it. They asked him to step in a little bit and maybe, I don't know, change a few things. Rivera did not do that. And then the players didn't like what was happening for a lot of reasons, and things went sideways on them. Mm-hmm. And I still think Bieniemy is a very good coach. And I also feel like you need to be in the right place at the right time, in the right structure. And all of those things were wrong. And when the second they hired him, which was around this time last year, we all said, why does he want this job? And what is going on here? Like, this coach, like, this team's going to get sold. We didn't know to who at that point, but we're like, this team's going to get sold. We all know what that means. Rivera's got to win anyway. He's putting all his eggs in Sam Howell's basket. In January, he's saying that. Before we get to free agency or the draft, he's saying that. Think about that for a second. Think a year later, think about that for a second. And now I'm starting to think back on why the national media was so like, what?
Yeah, right.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, why? We haven't even gotten to free agency or the draft yet, and you're already saying you're definitively going to start the 5th round pick. Like, because of the game against Dallas? Really? And then Bieniemy signs on for it, and then we're all sitting here going, what's going on here? Something's not adding up. And so that's why I just want to let this go, because I think we all know the details. It doesn't mean Bieniemy's a bad coach. I am a little surprised he didn't get a job in the NFL. Maybe he was unwilling to take a position coach job. Maybe he was offered things. I don't know. Like, I don't know, like, what he was offered. But he takes this position in college, and then we'll see what happens. Albert Breer did a piece today, talked about it for a moment, and he said something. He had it was almost like a throwaway line, but it was how I kind of landed on Bieniemy and his tenure by the end of all of it, seeing him work for a year, close up, which was, he said, this is a cautionary tale of how national narratives sometimes don't jibe with what's happening inside of the buildings.
Yep, right.
Like, what happened with him here, and this was, not that it's a risk in hiring him, but he had become a poster child of he'd been passed over.
Yep. Right.
And, and then it was impossible, especially for someone who's white, to sit there and say, like I have a feeling like if people thought he was like the next great head coach, I don't think they would be scared to hire him. And I would point to there are a lot of African-American coaches. I agree with you. It's not represented enough, but like it's not like last year, D'Amico Ryans did get a 6-year deal. Like Mike Tomlin is one of the might be the longest tenured one now because Belichick's out in New England. It's probably the longest tenured head coach in the NFL right now. Like, I don't know. Like it was like Gerard Mayo just got elevated up to the position. Like, you know what I mean?
Just to step in for a sec. It was because it was paired with the worst time of that. Like, yes, Tomlin's been there for a while, but there hadn't been a new one hired. I agree with your sentiment. I agree with your sentiment. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying that representation is equal here. I agree. Like, there's more to overcome here.
Yeah,
like,
right.
But it's not like that all black coaches have been blackballed. And that was the part that I was like, I couldn't square when everybody made him the poster child of it.
Yep.
And then I got to watch him for a year, and I saw how he interacted with the players. And again, I'll go back to it. I'm not just saying this. I think he's a very good coach, but I think you need to be in the right place at the right time, especially to implement as hardcore as he was.
Yeah.
This team wasn't ready for that. And that might be about them, and it might be a little bit about him. And I remember in the summer, I got around to, all right, in the spring, I loved how hard he was. But at some point, it's got to become a compromise. It never was.
Yeah.
And that was the failing. And then Rivera needed to step in and help the compromise occur, and he didn't. He took his hand off the wheel and stepped away, and so they felt betrayed by him. Betrayed's probably a strong word, but you know what I mean by it. Yeah. They felt like he didn't have their back when they came to him with valid criticisms of what was going on here, and then more importantly, on the field, and I think the players are right about this, and this is starting to kind of leak out now too, they, like us, didn't understand the game plan.
Right.
Why are we throwing the ball 70% of the time?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, we weren't the only ones sitting up in the box going, what are you doing down there? The players were going, what are we doing down here?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
And so, does it matter whether he was fired, mutually left on his own? It doesn't. And I would hope that, the team doesn't address any of this. Just let it go. Like, we had a little tit for tat with Ben Johnson, which I thought was deserved a little bit because of what he did. In this case, just let this go. Yeah. Like, he was a good coach. He came into a very unusual, unsteady situation. He had to know it was very possible this was not going to go very well. Like, he had to know that. He didn't have Pat Mahomes. He had an unsteady situation. This was a team that wasn't going to spend money in the offseason. He was empowered in a way that most associated coaches, offensive coordinators are not empowered. This was weird. And if it had to work pretty well for him to succeed and get whatever he wanted out of it, which was either succeed, Ron, get a head coaching job, go somewhere else, stay here, whatever the plan was. There were a lot of things that had to go right for him, and they didn't. And we changed everything. And I don't know who thought he was sticking around once the new head coach was hired.
That's right.
So that's why it doesn't matter who said, who fired, who stayed, who mutually agreed to leave. Like, I quit before you left. Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Everyone's moved on, and let's just leave it like that.
I will say the Commanders would be interested to go, oh, is that the case? So we don't have to pay you for the last year of your contract? Like, I'm just saying, they might not have to say it publicly, but they go, oh, that's funny. Like, you don't want that last paycheck? That's fine.
Correct.
We don't need to.
That was weird too. Like, no one knew what his contract was.
That's right. Yeah.
No one knew what the length was.
That's
of
right.
it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which with the coaches, I guess, with head coaches, you find out length.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find out money. They're less and less you're finding out about the money, but you typically find out length. In the case of Bieniemy, we never knew how long his contract was.
That's right. Right. Exactly.
So anyway, I wish him luck at UCLA.
I will say this just to back up what you started this with. I'm not shocked he didn't get a gig because I think, not unlike the NBA, this league has become way more player friendly, and Bieniemy was anything but that here. From what we could gather, and
he was hard.
Yes, correct.
He was an old school hard coach, and I didn't have a problem with this because he worked his what off. Like, sure. That was like.
Well, I'm not taking away from his
this is
ethic.
why I keep going back to I have a lot of criticisms of what he did, mainly with the game plan. I have a lot of criticisms of it.
Sure.
But nobody was outworking that guy, and I know what his reasons were. And I wasn't against that, especially early. I'm like, this team needs accountability, needs to be pushed, needs to be made to play better. Our offense hadn't done jack nothing in years.
Sure.
I'm all right with this. And I actually think it was necessary, but then at some point it has to become a compromise. They got to be on your side.
Yeah.
He lost McLaurin.
Yeah, right. 3 weeks in, by the way. Not even 3 weeks.
It's hard to lose McLaurin.
No, you started to lose McLaurin in training camp because remember McLaurin was like, "I'm just fighting for my guy," and he was telling him get the F up or whatever he said.
I was there that day.
Yeah,
I was one of the 15 people because it was an OTA. I was one of the 15 people there that saw that actually happen, and I didn't think it was that big of a turning point thing. Like, it was a really chippy practice.
Yeah.
St. Juice did something he should not have done, especially to his own teammate, and not in pads and all that stuff. Like, you're not, like, what are you doing? McLaurin just went over to him and stuck up for his teammate. And then Bieniemy, it wasn't yelling at McLaurin. It was more like, I want you guys focused on the next play is what it was about. Don't worry about the nonsense. And that's when McLaurin was like, I'm sticking up for my teammate. And I don't think it was like the end of the marriage in the spring, but it was noticeable. And these were the little moments where I went, when is he going to be open to them and have a compromise with them? Because that's going to have to happen. And I didn't see much of that. And his offense, started to stall. And then Hal took so many hits and so many sacks that I just couldn't believe he wasn't changing his game planning.
Yeah.
Like, that was the part I think was the biggest to me criticism of him. Like, maybe over time they learn it's his way or the highway and they get on board with it, because I've seen this. There's hardcore coaches that have won before. That's just his style. And I know what his reasonings are. And I didn't think he was unfair about a lot of this stuff, but it's on the field. You have to win to implement this. And the way they were playing with the players that they had didn't make any sense to me, and clearly didn't make any sense to them either. And some of these pieces subsequently have argued basically that the players weren't preparing to throw the ball that much in the game. He just abandoned what they were going to do, which did feel like, to me, felt kind of,
Yeah, right, exactly.
It did, especially when they got behind.
Yep.
Like, what was the game where they threw the ball like 28 straight times or something like that, or didn't run the ball? There was a game.
Wasn't it the Bears game?
It might have been.
They completely just went like off script from the get-go.
They just didn't run the ball again. It was like from the second quarter on, they never ran the ball again. And I remember telling people like outside, I'm like, I don't know if you noticed this, but that happened, and everybody's jaws dropped. They were like, I've never heard of that. And like, we haven't either.
Yeah, right.
Like, it was weird. And the weirdest part is we have really good running backs.
Yes, correct.
Yes, we don't have bad running backs. We have good running backs.
That was always the most baffling thing about the offense the entire year. It was not that Howell was this terrible quarterback. It was, you shouldn't be relying on the second-year, fifth-round pick quarterback. You should be relying on your go-to guys. And then, as I said, I think guys in the NFL can buy into any game plan if you're winning. Not unlike when Scott Turner was running the offense. It was certain guys' days. It was Jahan's day. It was Terry's day. It was Brian Robinson's day a lot of times because they were relying on the run. Howell was throwing for like 300 or 400 yards, and these guys would have 2 catches. And you're like, where's the offense even going at this point? That's where you start losing players too, where you're not even watching a teammate actually dominate a game. The offense is just dinking and dunking, essentially. So
I'm trying to remember the hiring cycle here, but I'm pretty sure it was 5 of the 8 was a person of color that got the head coaching job. Gerard Mayo, Raheem Morris, Dave Canales. Who am I missing here? The Titans hired Brian Callahan. We hired Dan Quinn. The Chargers hired Jim Harbaugh. Who else had who am I missing? There's 2 other openings that occurred.
The full listings were Brian Callahan with the
Mike
Titans.
McDonald went
Mike McDonald with the Seahawks.
To the Seahawks.
Antonio Pierce officially got hired with the Raiders.
So it's 4. 4 of the 8, correct, were men of color that got the job. This got really uncomfortable. I've talked about this with some of the other reporters that covered the team when Bieniemy was here. He became a poster child. He became kind of a national, people looked at him as the poster child of people who've been passed over because he was on a team that won a lot, but he wasn't ascending out and getting these jobs. And Matt Nagy did, and others did, and he didn't get these opportunities. And anytime you would bring up any other hiring of a black man or a person of color, that seemingly wouldn't count for this argument. And, I think they picked in seeing him for a year, they picked the wrong person to plant the flag on.
Yes. Yeah.
That's correct. It's not that he's a bad coach. It's just that he clearly, you have to trust the people who are hiring this a little bit, that they don't necessarily have to give somebody something if you don't know the day-to-day of how he works with the players. And, a lot of teams interviewed him and a lot of teams passed on hiring him, and only they can tell you why. But after seeing him work for a year, if the Commanders thought about ascending him up after what I saw, for a year, if he had come back, in a different capacity, I wouldn't have like I said, I think he's a very good coach, but he did not exemplify the head coaching things. Like, he had lost the offense along the way.
Right.
So, whatever. All right. Let me get into the other stuff. Ralph Vacchiano.
By the way, James Wood was born in Rockville, grew up in Olney, and then when they figured out he was really good at baseball, went to IMG Academy in Florida. So there you go.
Okay, so he did that. So he's like your neighbor.
Yeah,
he was your neighbor.
Pretty much, yeah.
He lived next to you. You never even knew.
Never even knew.
You never even knew.
Well, the time he was,
Halloween, he came by and the Callows were giving him candy. You didn't even know.
By the time he was good, I mean, clearly he was
you
gone.
didn't even know.
So, anyways, sorry.
Let me talk about, let's see, Ralph Vacchiano, who's covered the NFL for a long time out in New York, is now the second prominent reporter who has put out there are teams that want Sam Howell.
Yep.
And his piece went so far as to potentially put a price on it, like they might get the Commanders as high as a third-round pick for him.
Yep, right.
This is what I said about it a week ago when I saw the first one come out to suggest that somebody might be interested in him. I am in no interest in trading him if it's like a fifth or a fourth round pick. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
He's clearly at minimum a valuable backup to me.
That's right.
And why would I don't think I'm going to pick anybody better than him in the fifth round. So why in the world would I take a pick for him? Mm-hmm. But if you come at me with a third, high third, or a low second, I'm going to have hard pressed to turn that down, especially if I'm assuming that I'm picking a quarterback with the second overall pick.
Yeah.
Or trading for one, but acquiring one. I have heard nothing out of Ashburn that would give any kind of impression that they're surprising everybody, trading out of number 2, getting whatever they can, and rolling with Hal. I've gotten zero impression from anybody, albeit I think it is a valid argument to have.
Sure.
I don't think it's an invalid argument. I think it's a valid argument. And I think you're seeing reports like this, which only validates what I think about Hal. I think he can play. I don't know what his ceiling is. I think for all the reasons we talked about with Bieniemy in the offense and the unsteady, nature of what the team was a year ago, I think he got in a situation where I'd like to have him get a do-over in an offense that, maybe is better to protect him, that doesn't throw the ball as much, that maybe after a year of taking a beating like he did, he'll recalibrate himself a little bit here under a new staff. I would buy there is a future for him. I didn't walk out of this season going, that guy's done or he can't play or there's no higher level for him. Quite the contrary. I actually think that there possibly is, but I don't think it's going to be with this staff because I think they're going to pick a quarterback and just kind of move on. Now, the question is, do you retain him? And that will come down to price. And if Ralph Vacchiano is right and someone is willing to give up what ends up, in the Jets' case, a high third-round pick, well, I got to think about that.
Yeah. You also have so many roster holes. Yes, he's a cheap backup. Yes, he plays the most important position. But you're moving in a main direction somewhere else, obviously, with number 2 overall.
Yes.
If you can fill another need with him, too, and someone comes to you with a player as well, I don't know what that compensation would be like, but if you get somebody that has a first-round pick that hasn't flashed as much on a position that you need, I think you need to listen for that as well. I don't think people realize, you've talked about it, but I feel like a lot of people don't realize how many holes are going to be on this team once free agency opens up. If Hal can actually fill a hole for you by trading him to someone for a player, I wouldn't mind that one either. Whether that's a draft pick or an actual player. But
you can get a veteran backup. And here's the thing, in Hal's case for, say, the Jets or the Patriots, right? Well, maybe it depends what the Patriots do, actually. But, let's say the Patriots go after Kirk Cousins or something like that.
Right.
Or the Jets who currently have Aaron Rodgers. I understand the thinking that they would want to bring in Hal because they know Rodgers is only going to play for a couple more years. They know Zach Wilson isn't the answer behind him. They don't have another quarterback. He's a really cheap alternative. They saw him play. He can play a little bit.
Yep.
So he sits under Rodgers for a year or two and, they get him nice and ready. And when Rodgers eventually, moves into astrology or whatever he's doing next, then Hal can take over.
Moves to upstate New York.
I would buy that as a plan for them.
Yeah.
For us, like the idea of keeping him, well, I know he can play, and I think he could be a really valuable backup for us. But if we are taking the number 2 overall pick as a quarterback, then we're not prepping him to take over at any point in time soon. In fact, we'd be wasting the asset by not trading him if that's the price.
Right.
That said, don't come at me with a 5th-round pick because I'm in no rush to get rid of him. Mm-hmm. I would rather keep him at that point. So I wouldn't be surprised, considering how quarterback poor the league is in general, that somebody doesn't come along and says, let's give up something of semi-value to bring him back. And a team like the Jets, I actually think it'd be smart for them to think this way. Rodgers is only going to be there for a certain period of time. They need to have somebody who can play that's underneath them that makes no money at all. And they do have some picks to give up because they got a top 5 defense over there. If Rodgers comes back, you can keep selling yourself that we'll be fine if he's healthy and we'll have a real shot here. Let's have our quarterback of the future give up a pick to do it. I would actually buy that. Like, I would buy that they might do something like that. The Patriots are looking at him. Vacchiano's piece said the Patriots would look at him.
Yep.
To be the starter? Is that? Because they're picking 3rd.
Right.
So they're not taking Drake May? If they're taking Drake May, why do they want Hal?
Yeah, right.
If he's right and they're actually interested in him, are they looking at him as a starter and maybe taking Marvin Harrison with the 3rd overall pick? Is that what they're thinking? Or they're trading out and getting as many assets as they can get? What are they thinking about here?
I mean, the Patriots could go full galaxy brain and think no matter who they draft at 3rd, they don't want to start right away and keep him on the bench for a year. I mean, like, nobody thinks that way anymore, but
maybe they don't like Drake May.
I mean, maybe, but
maybe they're going to trade with Atlanta and go down to 8 and get whatever and get 3 first-round picks, and then they trade a 3rd for Hal and go, let's take a shot on him.
Well, I think it's also, too, now, I think some teams that have some runway to work with, the Patriots are one of those organizations that do, especially, I mean, not with their fans being pissed off for no reason, but they're going, we've won so much, we can kind of play around here. Look at what's happened with Mahomes. Look at what's happened with Jordan Love. Like, maybe they're thinking, we're going to draft a guy high, but we need someone to sit in here for a year because we want to take our time with who's next. Because maybe Kraft is willing to show that patience because he's going, I really need this next franchise guy to work out because I cannot go through another failed quarterback here. How do we do that? We'd let the guy sit on the bench for a year or halfway through the year or whatever that number ends up being. And maybe they think it's worth it to get Hal just in case you can stay competitive with him.
In a different spot, in a different space, and not drafting where the Commanders are drafting, I would make a stronger argument that I'd give Hal another shot. But because of where they're picking, it is hard to turn that down.
Right.
I don't know how you turn down Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams.
Right.
Considering what their situation is. Or trading out and taking whatever the haul is, and then I guess you could think about it at that point. But it's hard for me.
You have to flip that haul back to get it in the quarterback if it doesn't work out.
Correct.
I mean, that's the problem. Like,
yes.
What are you really? You're getting the haul, but you're not if you need to get back up into the first 5 again.
But it will go back to we can do this if you want. We can go through the roster a little bit. I haven't really done it yet, and we can go through it a little bit. You're right. There are a lot of holes. Mm-hmm. There is an argument that the right thing for them to do is if you don't love Jaden Daniels or Drake May, to take the 3 first-round picks or whatever. Yep. And get what you can and start filling out the roster and kick the can down the road on quarterback, or look at Hal and say, let's give him another shot with this new offensive coordinator, and maybe things will go a little bit better for him and people might feel a little differently. Because I'll go back to my original premise about him. I'm not so down on him that I don't think he can play. In fact, I think he can. I just think he was in a really rough situation. I don't like the game planning that occurred a year ago. Yeah. He was not protected particularly well. It might as well have been his rookie season. And the hits caught up to him, and he was shook by the end of the year. And that scared me because the confidence was really shaken. It was obvious. But you know what? Season's over. Yeah. It's a whole new group of people here now. Maybe they'll think about it differently. So I think that it's a viable argument. I just don't see how they would go that direction picking 2.
No, like I've said this before. If Adam Peters were to come out and say, if they traded back and say, we have too many holes, we wanted to fill as many as they can as possible, I would say, you get the benefit of the doubt. You're allowed to do that. Correct. But I wouldn't like it because I think when you're picking that high, you take the quarterback when you don't have a
especially when it's not like the Pickett year where there was no quarterback
That's
like
right.
that. There's 3 of them,
Yes,
maybe
right.
more, depending on what people really think of McCarthy. We're
That's
not
right.
totally sure.
Yeah.